A lot of us who are deep down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, see that Bitcoin is just so obvious, of course. It's just right in front of our face. How could you not get it? But we also forget that we all started from a place of zero knowledge about Bitcoin, except for Satoshi.
And in the great year of 2025, with 1 million Bitcoin educational resources and 21 million Bitcoin podcasts, it's pretty crazy that so many people still don't understand that Bitcoin is the solution.
But it's very difficult to understand the solution if you don't even understand the problem. Our next speaker created what I believe is one of the best Bitcoin educational videos ever made.
Up next, we have entrepreneur and educator Joe Bryan with What's the Problem?
Please give Joe a warm welcome to the stage.
Thank you, guys. Hi, everyone. My name's Joe Bryan. I'm very pleased to be here today to get to talk to you about what's the problem. The fact that we're all here today means that most of us have already put most of this together, but it is a challenge. The problem is we have most of the world have absolutely no idea. And so I made this video earlier this year, and it's a 39-minute video, which I'm going to try and do live for you in 25 minutes. So we'll see how that goes. It's been picked up by many, many Bitcoiners around the world, and it's now available in over 30 languages. The presentation itself, the speaker notes, and the transcript, and available for everybody to take and deliver themselves in whatever environment makes sense. Because the challenge is we need everyone in the world to see it. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it again, and humans remember stories. So I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please share it with as many people as you can. And once everyone's seen it, we can make a massive leap forward. So here we go. What's the problem? Well, too many. Everybody, everywhere has this creeping sense that something is not right. They can't put their finger on it, but they know life continues to get harder. Life never gets easier. The list of problems that everyone faces just seems to grow, and each of the problems seems to get bigger. Now, for your average person, they would see a list of problems, and I could easily have written twice as many on the screen, but they would see them as unconnected issues. What does the obesity crisis have to do with declining birth rates, have to do with the forever wars or the cost of living crisis? But for us, we know that these all share a single root cause, and it's the quality of our money. And so I'm going to talk you through a story. And so imagine we're on this far-off world, and there's hundreds of smart people traveling across a vast ocean on a ship. And they capsize on a deserted island. Now, this deserted island is so far from everywhere else, they're effectively cut off. And they're starting again from zero. Now, given they've come from an advanced civilization, even though they are cut off, they know ultimately where they're going to get back to. But for the very first time, they have to rebuild. And so for the first time, they face the question of what makes a good money? Because in order to have a society that's functioning, we need to have a stable monetary system. And to suspend your disbelief slightly further, despite being in rags, they can create whatever monetary system they want with whatever characteristics. And so they decide not just to create good money, but they create the perfect money. And the perfect money is fixed supply forever, instantly and costlessly verifiable by anybody at any time. It's effortless to store and move, and it has negligible costs for doing so. It's infinitely divisible. It exists forever without any deterioration. Every piece is obviously the same as every other piece forever. Everyone, everywhere, can both send and receive, and you hold it yourself. You don't need somebody else to hold it for you, and nobody can stop you sending or receiving it. So this is great. They all agree on the characteristics, but now a disagreement occurs. Two leaders emerge across the island. One, Satoshi, he says, well, we all agree that these are the characteristics of perfect money. And characteristics being characteristics, they're not going to change. So we lock it in and we move forward. Whereas Fiatello, he says, yeah, I get that and I agree. However, what if the people we put in charge feel like they need to make a change for whatever reason? There's an emergency or something like that. I think we should have the perfect money, but we also have a big red button that we can press if we really need to. Of course, no one ever will, but if we really need to, it's there, and we can change any of these characteristics if we need to. Satoshi cannot get on board with this, so he builds a massive wall right down the middle of this island, and this wall is so big, it cuts off the trade and communication from both sides. And on one side, they use Satoshis, which is perfect money always, and on the other, they use Fiatellos, which is perfect money to start with. Now, initially, both sides are effectively using the same money, but they're starting again from zero, and the order of the day is survival. Everybody's doing their own fishing for their food, cutting down their own trees for firewood and building materials, and they're building their own shelters. Despite having perfect money, there's very limited trading, because there's very limited excess of anything. It's about self-sufficiency. But humans, being humans, they realize that I'm actually better at doing some things than others. I can derive a competitive advantage from focusing on one thing at the expense of the others. So people specialize. The person who's best at fishing spends all this time fishing. The woodcutter spends all his time cutting down wood, and now they produce twice the amount in half the time. Everyone has excess, and prices begin to fall. Not only do prices fall, quality goes up because they're better at doing it. And the fisherman can't build a house out of fish. The woodcutter can't eat woods. They're forced to trade with each other. And now you have active trading in a perfect money where prices are falling and quality is going up. But there's not only one fisherman and not one woodcutter, there's lots. And everybody is competing. And every purchase everybody makes is a combination of highest quality at lowest price. And so the competition and the specialization drives prices lower and lower and lower, and quality higher and higher and higher. And this leads to an excess of time, an excess of capital, which people can then reinvest to further improve their processes, derive new specializations, further driving prices down and quality up. So in a free market with perfect money, prices go down forever and quality goes up forever. And so what we see on both sides of the island is that the purchasing power of the money starts to increase over time. So they're both increasing at about 3% a year. The price of tomorrow is lower than today. And this helps everybody, regardless of whether they are productive or not. Even the most unproductive person in society sees a gradual increase in the quality of their life because their savings are growing, not melting. The money itself is becoming more valuable over time. That is until these guys come along. So both sides have a government, and it doesn't matter whether it's left or right, big, small, whatever. They're all exactly the same when it comes to this. Now, however well run any government is, in the fullness of time, eventually it will hit a budget deficit where the amount it's raising in taxes is below the amount that it's spending. Now, this is where we see the divergence. So for Satoshi, he has no choices other than raising taxes or cutting spending, or a combination of the two. Whereas Fiatello has the same choices, but he also has a big red button. And I didn't tell you they're both up for re-election. And Fiatello knows if he raises taxes or he cuts spending, it's going to cost him votes. So just this time, he's going to press the big red button and print a little extra Fiatellos for the government. And this is where we see the consequences. So for Satoshi, he loses the election, hasn't been able to hide the changes from the population. Government size reduces, efficiency increases. There's short-term pain for the population, but a greater level of social sustainability is reached because people realize there's no free money. But prices continue to fall and quality continues to increase. Whereas for Fiatello, great news, got re-elected, and no one even knew. And there were no consequences. But now something has changed. So what's happened? He's hit the big red button. He's printed money, fiatellos for the government. He's debased the currency. Those extra fiatellos have gone into the pocket of the government. And this has three main impacts. The first is it distorts the price signals in the free market. The second is that business input costs increase. And the third, it drives asset inflation. Now that first one, before he printed extra fiatellos, the only reason any prices would change is if there's a change in demand or supply. But when he's printed the fiatellos, they've gone into the pocket of the government, and the government has then spent those in the economy with people close to the government. Now this looks like demand, and it starts to drive prices up closer to the government. But it's not demand, it's just extra fiatellos. But it's a price signal to all the entrepreneurs in the market that there's now a demand-supply imbalance closer to the government. So the active capital, the active entrepreneurs across the economy get pulled closer to the government to compete for this extra profitability. It undermines the productivity of the rest of the economy, and now prices stop falling because competition is undermined. So it drives a misallocation of capital. Now, as these first recipients of the money start spending in the economy, they begin to drive up the input costs for every business, regardless of whether they are close to the government or not. The cost of hiring people, of energy, of raw materials all start to increase. And so every entrepreneur across the whole of Fiatello's Island is now faced with a choice. Being an entrepreneur is not risk-free. You spend time and effort running a business, and your reward is your profitability. If your costs go up, your profitability is eroded. And there comes a choice whether the risk-reward still makes sense. If it doesn't, you close the business, you go and work for somebody else. Now, for entrepreneurs who then need to reinstate their previous profit margin, they have a choice between three things. They can either pass on the price increase, they can shrink the product, or they can try and find some way to compromise on the quality of the product itself. Now, this is where consumer inflation comes from. It's the only source of consumer inflation, is the direct result of the money printer. It is not entrepreneurs being greedy, it's just re-establishing the existing profit margin they had before Fiatello started printing money for free. Now, those first two, if you have a physical product, the easiest thing to do is just keep the products exactly the same size, same quality, and just pass on the price. Alternatively, it's to keep the price the same, the quality the same, but shrink the product. It's now 10% smaller. Now, both of these impact the consumer. You now have reduced affordability. They're either paying more for the same thing, or they're paying the same and receiving less. It's making people poorer. And this is visible inflation and semi-visible inflation. The third option is for businesses to compromise. The easiest way to compromise on the quality of their products is to fire people. And so Fiatello starts to see a rise in unemployment across his population, and the government has to get more involved. But the more insidious way is to compromise on the input quality itself. So he starts to see a deterioration in quality of products across his island. Things now break in 1 year as opposed to 5 years. He starts to see the fresh ingredients that used to be in the food get replaced with increasing levels of industrialized sludge. It drives a health crisis. He now sees a rise in obesity across the population, putting more pressure on the government to solve it and making the population even more unproductive. And that third one, asset inflation. So Fiatello thinks he solved economics. I press the big red button, I print Fiatellos, and all the asset prices go up and everyone gets richer. But that's not the case. People who own the assets, they benefit to some degree. But those who don't are typically those who are also suffering from reduced affordability through the cost of living, through consumer inflation. So he sees a growing wealth inequality appear across the island. And as house prices go up, the rent goes up, fewer people can afford to be renting, they start downsizing or they become homeless. Yet more pressure on the government. And now, because asset prices just constantly go up, it becomes just common wisdom that you don't keep the money anymore. You buy stuff, you buy assets, you buy speculative assets because they only ever go up. If you're not invested, you're a fool. And so you get more and more leverage entering the economy. People don't keep the money themselves. They buy a second home or they buy an investment portfolio. They take out leverage to do so. And now suddenly all of society is stuffed full of debt on the consumer level, on the business level, or on the country level. And now because the asset prices have gone up, nobody can live a Homer Simpson life anymore. No one can be an average person, have a one-income family, have a wife who can stay at home and raise the children, have 3 children, live in a detached house, have a car. You can't afford that anymore because the house prices are too high. And your salary has not increased at the rate of the assets. And so you start to see the need for both parents to be working. And so you start to see the breakdown of the nuclear family. There's more stresses. There's less time for each other. You can't afford to have as many children. You can't have 3 children anymore. You have 2, maybe 1. Because the compromise doesn't work. The economic calculation no longer works. And so Fiatello starts to see a rolling over of his demographics. There are fewer and fewer young people coming through. The older people are living longer and not retiring. And he's having to push back the retirement age and the benefits that people receive in their retirement and water down the promises he's made because he realizes his pension system is totally insolvent. Now, for many, they're not in a position to be thinking about a family yet or buying a house. They're probably renting. But for them, they struggle to set down roots. You can't assume you're going to be somewhere for 3 to 5 years anymore because the rent goes up so much every year. It's 1 year, maybe 2 years. You start to see the asset prices escalating away from you. You start to think, well, I'm never going to be able to buy a house. If I'm never going to be able to buy a house or have a family, what's the point of saving? I'm going to live my best life. I'm going to go on holiday. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to put off making short-term sacrifices for the benefit of the long term. So you see even lower birth rates. And for people who are not renting, who are struggling on a day-to-day basis, where life just gets harder and harder, they begin to slip into hopelessness, bad decisions, and it drives yet more of a health crisis and addiction. And all of this drives a mental health crisis across the whole population and puts yet more pressure on the government. And suddenly the government has got a series of issues it needs to try and solve by further distorting the free market, by investing back in. And between the misallocation of capital and the increased leverage in the economy, it sows the seeds of the next emergency. And now Fiatello's stuck. The only choice he has is to press the big red button again. And the cycle repeats, and he's starting to realize now actually printing those extra Fiatellos wasn't consequence-free at all. And now he's lurching from crisis to ever bigger crisis. He hits the big red button, he debases the currency, and he drives a bigger government. And he sees a sprouting of a set of parasitic industries around the government. And it becomes very unclear to the population now where the government ends and these parasitic industries begin. The government becomes protective over the industries at the expense of the population. And he realizes this isn't free market capitalism anymore. This is crony corporatism. These industries push to be regulated. They tell the government, you've got to protect the population. You need to put in rules and regulations. All the rules and regulations do is limit competition. They allow the 2, 3, 4, 5 big players in these sectors to become surgically attached to the money printer, to benefit from all these additional Fiatellos being printed, safe in the knowledge that they won't get competed against because of the rules and regulations protecting them. And as we know, as competition falls, prices start to rise and quality deteriorates. And then over time, the media gets captured. The biggest spenders of the media tend to be those industries attached to the big red button. And as the government has to get involved with more and more issues that it helps perpetuate in society, it starts to realize that the level of social stability is weakening. And so it has to start initially subtly and then more explicitly clamping down on misinformation, disinformation, and making sure the media is fully aligned with it. And when you have a captured media, a military-industrial complex fomenting strife from foreign shores, and Wall Street willing to finance anything, you get the creation of the forever wars. And not only that, the population support them because all they see on their TV is, we've got to do this because it's the right thing to do. And between the forever wars, the banking system bailouts, and the excessive debt, it sows the seeds of the next emergency. But this time it's just so much bigger. And he has no choice. He's got to press the big red button again, but now people are waking up. There's a massive erosion of trust. And this goes round and round and round until something breaks. And now he's getting very worried. So what's happened to the money? Well, he's destroyed the free market, and he's printed a lot of extra money on top, so the money is now melting. And so what's happened to the Fiatello Island population? Well, the poor, who have fixed wages, no asset ownership, and low income security, they cannot win. They just get poorer every single year. The middle earners, who have salaries, a bit more job security, probably own a house. They can never sell the house and benefit from any gain because they've got to live somewhere. They are becoming the new poor. But surely the wealthy are doing well, right? They own assets, businesses. For them, it's death by 1,000 cuts. They look at their wealth when measured in fiatellos, and it just goes up. But the rate at which Fiatello is printing fiatellos is greater than the rate that their wealth is going up. So over time, their share of the pie is going down. And the only part of society doing well is the politically connected. And he realizes that actually this is just industrialized theft at this point. And so now so much time has passed that the wall down the middle of the island starts to crack, and for the very first time, people and money can flow from one side to the other. And on one side, the fiatellos are melting, and on the other, they're growing every year in purchasing power. So this sums it up. On a fiatello standard, your money is stealing from you. On a Satoshi standard, the whole world is working 24/7 to increase your purchasing power. But now the escape valve is open because the wall's got a hole in it. So people realize they can't save in the fiatellos, so they sell the fiatellos to buy the Satoshis. The fiatellos decline further in value, triggering yet more budgetary and currency crises for Fiatello to deal with. And he only has one choice. He's got to press the big red button again. But now printing fiatellos is not enough because there's a leak in the system. The faster he prints, the faster they go through the wall. So he's got to change something else. He changes the censorship-resistant nature of the money. You now can't hold it yourself. You've got to put it in the bank. The bank's going to protect you. We've got to tackle terrorism or money laundering or fraud or some long list of excuses. The bank's going to check every single transaction for you, and if it's safe, they'll approve it. He may even put in explicit capital controls and say you can't buy Satoshis at all. But people and capital always finds a way. But it's important to note it's not just the money, it's the people. The people move to Satoshi's side of the island because you cannot build a life on sand. And so where does it end? Well, it's one of four things. If he's lucky, it's sustained inflation, bordering on hyperinflation. This is very difficult to do when you steal from people at an accelerating rate forever without something going wrong. It's definitely asset seizures. Now that all the money's in the banks, he'll decree one day, we're all in it together, and it will go into the pocket of the government. Just like in Cyprus in 2014 or the US in the 30s with gold. It's politically extreme outcomes. The population don't understand where all these issues have come from. The government doesn't educate them. The media certainly don't educate them. And at every step, the solution has been more government involvement. And that ends in one place, or something worse. But in every scenario, people want to hold the Satoshis and not the fiatellos. So if we go back to that list of characteristics of perfect money, he only compromised 2 of them, and look where we ended up. Now the reveal is the dollar is just a terrible version of the fiatello. it's corrupted on the same 2 measures, and it's compromised on the other 5. And the US has a major fiat problem. They're losing $2 trillion a year on $6 trillion of spend. There's very limited ways to drive the revenue side, and even arguably the most productive man in the world, Elon Musk, spent 6 months under full backing of the US government with unlimited access. And he couldn't fix it. He couldn't even reduce it. And now he's given up. Nobody can fix this problem. And so one of the most famous charts in Bitcoin is that we are living through the Weimar Republic in slow motion. The US is losing $2 trillion a year on $6 trillion of spend, is $38 trillion in debt, and has promised to pay another $50 to $200 trillion in the future. Just hasn't had to write the check for it yet, through Medicare, Medicaid, etc. The money printer is systematically destroying the US dollar's purchasing power. But the US dollar is the best we have. Everything else is just so much worse. This is the change in the purchasing power, well, the exchange rate of every currency in the world versus the dollar over the last 10 years. Some currencies have ceased to exist completely. If you're Venezuelan, Sudanese, Syrian, Argentinian, Turkish, you've lost 90 to 99% of your purchasing power, just versus the dollar, which itself is being slowly destroyed. And so the unfortunate reality, as the wonderful Lynn Alden says, is absolutely nothing stops this train. And so the conclusion, as we all know by now, is that the history of government management of money has been, except for a few short happy periods, been one of incessant fraud and deception. So what's the solution? There's only one, and it's the separation of money and state. Nobody, anywhere, should have access to a big red button. Nobody should be able to print for free what you have to work for. And so through this story, hopefully you can see that it's very true. If we fix the money, we will fix the world. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, if you go to whatstheproblem.org, you can find these resources in 30+ languages. Please help yourselves and try and share this with as many people as possible. We have a lot of people we need to save. So, thank you.